permission in advance and are limited to 3 minutes. Those who wish to participate in the board meeting can access the webinar link provided. What we'll do is Allison can, or Daniel even, if you use the raise my hand feature, they can unmute you and give you access to the meeting. So with that, Allison, is there anyone wishing to speak?
Not at this time, Frank.
Oh, okay, Daniel. Okay. See if I can pull that up real quick. Okay. All right. So with that, we'll move on to item 4, consideration and possible action to approve the May 6th, 2021 regular meeting minutes of the Technical Advisory Committee. Has everyone read the minutes and any corrections or comments before we get a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes
Okay,
for May 6, 2021.
I'll second.
All right, was Dan with the second? All right. I think we can still do this with a normal vote. So if everybody could unmute, that's on the committee. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. With that, the motion passes, and we'll move on to the administrator update. Take it away, Vincent.
Mr. Chair, if you would allow item number 6, which is Kevin to present. He has a meeting that he has to get to, so I can hold off on my report until after Kevin's update. So if you could go to item number 6, that would be great.
Okay, that would be fine with me. Do we need a motion, or are we good?
No motion, you're fine.
Okay. All right, Kevin, what have you got for us today?
Thank you. I've got a lot for you, Mr. Chairman. A lot going on in Washington as well as Phoenix. I'll start at the state level. So last Thursday, the legislature took, I guess, best way to describe it is a little hiatus where they'll be out for 2 weeks. Right now, the plan is to reconvene next Thursday on June 10th. And the reason for the recess was that they did introduce a package of budget bills last Monday. Typically, leadership and the governor, I think they've been in agreement for quite some time on sort of a blueprint for a budget. Typically, you don't see the bills actually released unless they're fairly confident that they have a good shot of having adequate votes to pass it through the House and Senate. And that's exactly what they attempted to do last week. And that effort came up short on Wednesday, and that's when they decided to basically step away. Now, since then, it's even gotten a little bit more heated over the Memorial Day weekend. The governor decided to veto 22 bills that were on his desk, basically sending the message that he wasn't going to accept anything coming from the legislature until they basically were able to come to an agreement on a budget. So I'd have to say tempers are pretty flared, and it's right now we're in kind of a difficult place as far as the votes, because clearly they did fall short. And most of that concern centered around the tax cut package that was proposed. The centerpiece of that is phasing down to a flat individual income tax rate of 2.5%. Right now, I believe the range is from about 2.59 to 4.5. So it would be a cut for everybody, but particularly for those in the upper income brackets. I think the primary concern, or I guess there's two primary concerns, and is one is what would the impact be to the state budget going forward? After being fully implemented, it's estimated that the impact would be a loss of about 1.9 billion a year, which would potentially grow over time. And then a second concern was there were inadequate measures to basically hold cities harmless from the impacts to revenue sharing. In lieu of having their own income tax authority, cities and towns currently receive 15% of the income tax revenue that is collected. And so there'll more than likely have to be some measures put in place to alleviate concerns on both of those issues before they have the adequate votes. For transportation, I think we were fairly confident going into the budget discussions that we weren't going to see anything in the way of increasing the permanent revenue stream, something like a gas tax increase. We were also fairly confident that because of the level of surplus funding that was available, that we would also not see any HERF raids either. And both of those came to be. But at the same time, with the level of surplus revenue that's available, it was anticipated that a lot of one-time funding would be directed to infrastructure projects across the state. And there was roughly 340 million that was included in the budget. Now, that's not a done deal. In fact, there was some opposition to the level of spending in the budget as well, and that included transportation. I think so. There will be an effort to try to scale that back. However, because the manner in which this funding is going to be spent is so laid out in the legislation that in order to cut transportation, you're going to have to cut specific projects, presumably from some other member's district, and they may have an issue on that. They may come off the budget if a project in their district is removed. And so, in addition, there's tremendous amount of support for the infrastructure investment. So, nothing's a done deal until basically the budget passes. But I think as far as this one-time funding being directed to transportation, we're in pretty good shape. As far as the SIMPO region is concerned, there was 4.7 million earmarked for a repavement project on 69 through Prescott Valley. There was also in that total 340 million, 109 million of that is getting directed to ADOT for rehabilitation projects. And that is pretty much statewide. And there was, I think, about a 2.2 million rehab project slated also for 69. So I'm assuming that's probably the stretch between Prescott Valley and Prescott. I don't know that for sure. And then there was another 2.2 million for Yavapai County's section of the 93. So that's where we are at the state level. Real quickly at the federal level, infrastructure continues to be the main focus on the agenda back there. It's somewhat complicated to follow because there are two different issues that are being addressed on infrastructure right now. First off, we're due for the reauthorization of all the existing federal transportation programs, which is the funding that comes in every year. We're on a one-year extension of the current 5-year authorization, the FAST Act. So we are due for reauthorization by October 1st. And of course, that will address the permanent revenue streams that come to the states and the regions for their transportation programs. But in addition to that, there's also a lot of discussions about an infrastructure package, which would be on top of those existing federal programs and would be more one-time in nature. So getting back to authorization, last week was really significant in that the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, which has jurisdiction over the highway title of the authorization bill, they passed out language on highways that basically calls for a 34% increase in highway funding. Now that would be ratcheted up. So by year 5, you'd be looking at levels far higher than what we're currently receiving. 90% of that funding would be distributed by formula. So we'd be getting away from this earmarking that has become all the rage recently. And another key element of that was this was bipartisan. All 20 committee members supported it. So as polarized as things are back there, this was one area where all the Republicans and Democrats who had a vote supported the language. And so that's a real positive. Next Wednesday, their counterparts in the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, they will do the same. The House and the Senate are structured differently. There are more committees in the Senate that are involved in drafting the bill. The House Transportation Infrastructure Committee, in addition to highways, they also have oversight over transit. And so we may get a better indication, at least, of what direction the House wants to go on transit programs, as well as how closely what they do reflects or mirrors what the direction that the Senate set forward. And then on the infrastructure package, the White House is continuing to basically negotiate with Senate Republicans to come up with an agreement on an infrastructure package. Both sides continue to move closer towards the middle. Initially, the White House came out with a $2.3 trillion proposal. The Senate Republicans countered with roughly $570 billion. The White House then dropped their proposal to $1.7 trillion, and now the Republicans countered with a proposal that's right about $930 billion. So they continue to move closer together. It is somewhat like comparing apples to oranges, so you got to be really careful as far as if you see any coverage on funding amounts. Presumably what the White House is proposing is all on top of the authorized programs, and it appears that most of what the Senate Republicans are proposing would include the authorized levels. So they're actually a little bit further apart than what's being reported, but they are continuing to move closer together. So like I said, that continues to be a priority, but I think there's still quite a bit of work that needs to be done to reach a consensus, but it does continue to be the priority back there. So this is something that they are continuing to work towards. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for additional infrastructure funding in the near future, and we'll see how it all plays out. And obviously, I'll keep everybody posted. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks. Anybody have any questions for Kevin? All right, that's a lot of information, and I appreciate it, Kevin, and I'm sure folks will contact you if they need anything else. So we appreciate all the hard work and the updates.
You bet. And that's it. I'm going to sign off in about 10 minutes for the State Transportation Board's study session on the 5-year program. So we may have some significant information there. The only, I think we've already seen a draft of what they're proposing for the new program. I think the one big issue is the HERF forecasts continue to improve as well. So I think there's the potential that there could be some additional revenue added to the program just based on updated HERF forecasts. And so I'll keep everybody posted on what comes out of that meeting as well.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right. Well, with that, I guess we go back to your item, Vinny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TAC. So just a couple quick items. So at this point, we're not planning on having any business for the TAC in July. I would ask you to go ahead and keep the TAC meeting on your calendars, and then the next couple of weeks we'll confirm that, and Allison will send out a cancellation. But at this point, we don't have any items. So just a heads up that at this point, we don't expect a July TAC meeting and a July executive board meeting. We'll send out a note later though on that. At this point, we're looking at August to be able to offer a hybrid option for this meeting. So staff is still continuing to work on the in-person option, but at this point, tentatively, we are looking at our August TAC meeting to be able to have both options for in-person and virtual. Again, we recognize that not everyone is still able to participate in person, most especially those in the greater Phoenix area or some of ADOT staff. So we're aware of that, and we'll make accommodations, and we'll keep you posted on that. Allison sent out the doodle poll for the retreat. At this point, it looks like Wednesday, August the 11th will be the date, which is 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. We'll include lunch. So again, Wednesday the 11th for the Simbo retreat. Reminder again to the group, I would say our scope for that retreat is relatively narrow in the sense that we'll be looking at our next 5 years, possibly 10 years, but most likely 5 years of our transportation improvement program, present what we have currently, and take in ideas and feedback as to if that still remains our goal and direction. So that's all I have for an update. Happy to take questions or comments at this point.
Vinny, do you want to, unless it's agenda is elsewhere, do you want to touch on the 69?
We do have it agendized down, so.
I see that.
Yeah.
Never mind. My apologies.
Yeah, that's okay. No worries.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if there's no questions, you're next with any transit updates.
Thanks,
Mobility
Frank.
management.
You bet. So just another brief update on activities with mobility management and transit. And in a minute, I'll give Norm an opportunity if there's any news for Prescott Valley. But as far as regional mobility management goes, if you all may remember, we have an agreement with Northern Arizona Council of Governments, NACOG. Chris was one of the ones, Chris Bridges led the conversation to have a partnership to work and have an agreement with mobility management that we're responsible for, but that NACOG is, if you will, leading or administering for all of Yavapai County. I am currently meeting with NACOG, to discuss the details of that and reviewing it. And again, I would say stay tuned for that. I will say one of the things that in that agreement was that we would do a couple things. They would provide mobility management for all of Yavapai County. In turn, they would apply for what's called 5310 mobility management funds on our behalf. And then the other thing that was given in that agreement was all of our transit planning funds. I will say initially, in reviewing this, I have asked actually for all of our transit planning funds, and they've agreed to return those. I think it's a real opportunity for us to be able to have those funds for many reasons. But one of the major reasons for asking for those funds back is that we're now able to consolidate those funds with our other PL funds or planning MPO planning funds. So we have opportunities, but again, stay tuned and I'll give more updates. I'm going to be meeting with NACOG staff again this afternoon to further that discussion and understand what's in our best interest is where we're at this point. But if I can give Norm an opportunity, I don't know if there's any Prescott Valley Transit updates, but we'd be happy to take some updates, Norm, if you have some.
Okay, Vinny. Yeah, Norm Davis, Town of Prescott Valley. You know, the $3.5 million of Transit CARES Act, just to update the group. Two things Prescott Valley is working on is to become a designated recipient of the funds. We did have our council approve the legal stuff here at a council meeting last week. So we're pursuing that with FTA, become a designated recipient to receive those funds. And we're getting very much closer to getting RFP finalized to find a vendor to deliver the microtransit services. So we're working on the RFP and getting the final touches put on that. Hope to have that out in the next 30 days.
Great. Thank you for the update, Norm, and I appreciate working with you and Pedro. That's all I have for mobility management and transit updates. If there's any questions or comments, happy to take any.
Okay. Thanks, Vinny. I think with that, we'll move on to federal and state updates. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see Mark on the line right now.
I don't either, Frank.
Yeah, I would like to maybe leave him a spot if he comes in later, give him a chance to speak later on if we can squeeze him in.
You bet.
I know he's always got a lot going down there, so
Yep.
If he's able to join us, we can hear from him later. With that, John, do you want to give us any updates on the Northwest District and who your boss is or anything like that?
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, no news on the boss. That might be a while. The updates are going to be real similar to our last meeting. Our State Route 69 widening project is at stage 3 design, and that's proceeding. The Road 1 North project on State Route 89, that construction we're expecting to begin this summer. We're addressing some utility relocation issues right now. We've had to make a slight adjustment in the design to avoid some underground utilities that were recently located, and we're also working with some of the overhead. We need to adjust some of the clearances on the overhead, so we should have construction starting on that this summer. We also have on State Route 89 the Paulden to Hell Canyon microseal project that will be coming up this summer as well. And that's what I have for today.
Okay, and just real quick on the Paulden project, the work they're doing now is just in preparation for that project, is that right?
Correct. We had some of our local maintenance forces did some local spot repairs to help get a better foundation for that microseal project.
Okay. All right. I'm looking forward to the one north if you can ever. I know that's been one of those projects that we all deal with in our careers. So hopefully we'll wrestle.
It really is. It's been a challenging project in the sense that it looks like a simple intersection, but it's got every element of a 3-mile long realignment all packed into one spot. So
yep.
Everybody wants to be in that same location. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but we got it.
That's what I've always learned, that dollar amount for projects doesn't seem to matter that much. They all seem to be the same amount of work, and dollar amounts just is how big a tool you're throwing at it.
Yep, so, it's got all the elements of a much larger project.
All right. Any questions for John? Okay. We'll move on to multimodal planning. Myrna, do you have anything for us today?
Hi, I just have a few little items here. As Mr. Adams mentioned earlier, the study session for the State Transportation Board actually starts in about 10 minutes. And then again on June 23rd, the State Transportation Board will meet again, at which point they will approve the 2022-2026 five-year construction program for adoption on July 1st. June 9th, and I'm sure if Mark logs in today, he may mention this, is the LPA training module 3 on federal authorization. If anyone is interested in registering for that, please contact either Mark or I'm sure he will have someone in his staff that can help registering if anyone's interested in attending that. July 1st, as you all know, is the HSIP call for projects. These are for the fiscal year 25 to 26 funding years. The 22 to 24 program has already, all the budget has already been programmed out. All applications due on November 1st. All the due tips are due at ADOT by July 1st. They don't have to be all entered in eStip just yet, but ADOT would like to have a list. Let's see, and lastly, RAISE grant applications are due July 12th. And if you are planning on submitting or collaborating with ADOT or need a letter of support, please contact ADOT's grant coordinator 30 days prior to the deadline. Contact Conor Carr at kkar@azdot.gov. Thank you. That's all I have. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody in SIMPO applying for a RAISE grant? Didn't think so.
Okay. I don't know if you heard you. What kind of grant is that, Dan? A RAISE grant?
Yes, it was formerly the Tiger Grant.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
the new version of the Tiger and the Build grants.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so stuck in my ways. I still think of federal legislation as iced tea. So that was 20 years ago, I think. So, okay. All right. Thanks, Myrna. With that, I think we're on item 9. Review and discussion and possible action to recommend approval for additional funding for the State Route 69 Safety and Capacity Improvement Project and subsequent amendment to the FY 2024 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, MTIP. Vinny, take it away.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the TAC. So I've had, I feel like at least a dozen meetings, but maybe that's a slight exaggeration, and I'll call it 6 to 8 meetings in the last few weeks regarding this cost overruns on State Route 69. So numbers have gone back and forth, and I believe we've worked with ADOT staff, with the project manager, Vivian, with Alvin Stump, district engineer. Either way, where we stand is SIMPO is responsible for the design of this project. There are cost overruns at this point of $350,000. I definitely appreciate the work of ADOT staff. They've, like I said, they've met with me several times. They've had several meetings to find ways of addressing this and seeing if there are any other alternatives. They're very aware of our budget situation being pretty tight. With that said, what I've done in receiving these cost overruns is, as SIMPO is responsible, if we were to pay that $350,000, would essentially eliminate our fiscal year 22 planning projects to pay for it. So instead of doing that, reached out to Yavapai County and the city of Prescott, asked if they would continue the agreement and the partnership that we've shared, and they have all agreed to do so at this point tentatively. It still has to, amended JPA still needs to be finalized, and then respectively needs to go to the County Board of Supervisors and the City Council, both sometime in July. But at this point, what I've proposed and they've tentatively have accepted is to split the 350,000 three ways. SIMPO would be responsible for 117,000. City of Prescott and Yavapai County would be responsible for 116,500 respectively. Again, I will, before I wrap this up, emphasize that we looked at all possibilities to either avoid or lessen this impact, and this is where we've ended up at. For what it's worth, to let the group know, I also did reach out to Representative Wynn, who was incredibly excited about the award for, I shouldn't say the award, my apologies, but the budget item for highway preservation project in Prescott Valley. He put in a request for $3.5 million. At this point, the budget, the statewide budget is showing $4.7 million. So when he got that on the budget, was excited, called me, let me know the news. About a week later, I returned the call, or I shouldn't say I returned the call, but I called him back and gave him the state of this situation. And again, he is looking into the possibilities of assisting with this project. I guess my approach and attitude is it was a bit of a long shot, a big ask, but I wanted to exhaust all possible options to help us out with this. So still waiting for a final response, but I am moving forward with Dan Cherry and Craig Seth with the City of Prescott to get these on, again, those agendas. But this item today is for the SIMPO share at 117,000. What you have in your packet is the outline of the funding that is being moved around to accommodate this 117,000. My preference would not be to necessarily go through it line by line. If we can avoid it, I'll be happy to do that if it's asked for. But Allison and I have basically needed to move several different fundings around, if you will, to accommodate this, primarily for the reason that we needed to update a couple of our funding sources, but then again, to get a little bit in the weeds, but there's only certain fundings that can be used for this particular design situation. So what you have in the packet is showing how we end up essentially clearing 117,000 to contribute to this project. And as I wrap up, the good news is I'm not coming to you and saying, here's how we came up with 350,000. And that's really, again, a real credit to our partnership with Dan and Yavapai County and Ian and the City of Prescott. So with that said, happy to take questions and comments. I do see Norm's virtual hand raised. So Norm, how can I help?
Vinny, just questions about funding of, I've been sensitive to get the Great Western study going. I see that's had a reduction of funding to about what 99,000 now?
Correct.
And not to get in the weeds, as you've cautioned me in the past, Vinny, but there's what, 600,000 of SCBG monies? Where's that residual balance in FY22?
So I would say that's, at this point, it's basically spread out across several different areas, and happy to, again, we can go through it if it would help to look at the specifics. What I would say at this point is staff, myself, is very aware of the priority of Great Western. So the idea is that at the August retreat, that we would really look at it with the executive board, with staff, with the technical committee, hear the input from you all, again, where Great Western is in the priority as relation to SR 6989A and also Sundog Connector. One of the reasons the last couple of meetings or a few meetings ago asked to table the Great Western was for the work that's now being done in the North Prescott area. There's a North Prescott study being done of the land use, and it looks like probably December sometime they'll have a final on that, and we'll be able to know what's going to be happening for land use in that area around the airport. So to me, it allowed us a little bit of breathing room. I know you all expressed wanting to hit the ground running July 1st on Great Western. But I would say August, we can talk as a group and see again where Great Western lies in the priority, and more specifically, what do you all recommend that we do with Great Western? Again, we're still sitting on a $1 million 2010 study. Definitely, we've heard for an update. An update would be significant financial contributions. Definitely have heard a lot about right-of-way, and we've had some discussions in the past as to what would be appropriate for SIMPO to do and or legal for us to do. So we're aware of that. So still trying to move the project forward, Norm. Need to take the money from somewhere. Right now, all the other dollars are committed. So that's what we have it tentatively. But come August, if the group again rallies around Great Western, we're happy to move budget items around. But I would say fiscal year 22 is pretty tight at this point, and what you have outlined is probably the best we can do at this point. So.
Next question I have, Vinny. The MTIP, why do we show the last 2 years, FY 20 and 21? I mean, that ends in 30 days. When does that drop off?
We can drop it off anytime we want to, in the sense that I like to have it, Norm, at least for me, and we don't have to print it publicly or even with you. It's a good reference as to our recent investments. It's more of a best practice, and if it causes any confusion, we can remove it. I know in Havasu, I think I ended up keeping the last 3 or 4 years, and again, ours was even smaller in Havasu, but it was good to show the public and the elected officials what our previous investments were. But I'm not, I don't need to, we can make the adjustment if the group would not like to see what we've invested in the past.
Well, I think that goes on the history that we've got on the last page of the, MTIP work plan. So I just think it's confusing myself. I mean, I know it well, but it goes on the capitulation sheet, typically what we've done in the past.
And that's a good point. And again, we're happy to remove that. I don't want to cause any more confusion, but it was just the way that to help illustrate some of the recent things that we've done.
And last question I had, Vinny, can the group get, I understand the work plan is final now. Can we all get an electronic copy of the final version? I know there are some amendments and changes.
You
if
bet.
Allison could send that out.
Yeah, we're happy to get that to you, Norm.
Is that final now, or does it have to be finally ratified? Is it 30 days up? I can't remember.
The 30 days is up. The executive board has approved it. And Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, or Myrna. I guess Myrna more than anything. So on our end, it's completely finalized, but I feel like there's one more final blessing by, is it ADOT and or Federal Highways? I think we get an official letter, I believe, Myrna. Does that sound right?
Yes, I believe right now all of the work programs are still in our contracts department, and once those are submitted to our director, Greg Byers, who will then turn around and submit those to FHWA.
Thank you, Myrna. So Norm, happy to provide it to you. I think the only thing left, if you will, is just kind of some formality, one final letter, but it's 99.9% done. So I think it'd be best for us to send it to you so you have it at this point.
Yeah, and I'm just looking ahead, Vinny. I know we're not having a meeting in July, but I'd like to just have those presentation materials ready and, a little head start for the executive board and technical staff for our retreat there August 11th. But we've got plenty of time. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to provide that. Frank, I see your virtual hands up next.
Thank you, and I apologize. I wasn't able to get this. Do you have maybe a brief overall summary of this project that you could recap for the overall scope of the project?
You bet. Thank you, Frank. And I probably should have let in with a little bit of that. So State Route 69 widening started in 2013 now. So we've been working on it 8 years. What's come out of that work and looking at this particular bottleneck section. Again, the scope of the project initially ran from Prescott Lakes Parkway, City of Prescott, west to Yavapai Road. So from the top of the hill where Walmart, In-N-Out, and the Lamb Chevrolet dealership is, down the hill, down past Lowe's to the Yavapai Road. So this is a widening project. It's currently what's been described as a bottleneck, where this is a 2-lane in both directions. And it goes from 3 lanes down to 2 lanes. And what essentially this widening project is would eliminate the bottleneck, make it 3 lanes throughout on both sides of State Route 69. We have campaigned, we as a region have campaigned incredibly hard over the years for this project to appear in the 5-year state transportation plan. I will say this is one of the very few projects that are outside of preservation. As you've heard from Kevin and others, that the State Transportation Board, due to limited dollars, has only been focusing now on preservation and no longer on expansion and modernization for Greater Arizona. So when they give their updates, they highlight State Route 69. And again, it is one of the very few projects that is not preservation. So it is a widening. One of the initial ways of moving this project forward was the real strong partnership between SIMPO, Yavapai County, City of Prescott. The City of Prescott has contributed $300,000 towards the project before this new cost overruns. Yavapai County, Flood Control and Yavapai County have both contributed a combined $300,000, so $150 and $150, and they've contributed total $300,000. At this point, again, before the cost overruns, SIMPO has provided $800,000 towards the project. So again, we're adding another $117 from SIMPO, and then $116.5 from each of those entities. One of the early incentives of the project to be a regional project was that this segment would be turned over to the City of Prescott after the project was done for ownership and future maintenance. Again, all of these things were discussed to really get ADOT, or to get the State Transportation Board to support the project. So City of Prescott, their contributions, their possible ownership, Yavapai County, SIMPO, all made it very, more appealing to make ADOT commit dollars towards this project. So while we have a little over $1 million, ADOT has, I want to say, around $11.5 million in this project. So it's creeping up on $13 million. One of the things early on was the City of Prescott made that initial commitment to take ownership, and then they decided that it may not be in their best interest, so they changed their position. And the reason why that's significant is at that point, ADOT, seeing that they would continue to maintain and own the segment, went ahead and expanded the scope of the project to include a median. So the initial discussions were a widening, but when that changed, they added a median. So now the median will run the length of what I've talked about, Prescott Lakes Parkway to Yavapai Road. In addition to, the median will now go to Heather Heights, which is essentially where the casinos are at the bottom of the hill there. So you have a median running the length of the project, helping with a number of left turn and safety issues. So I would say those are the highlights of the project. In many ways, pretty proud of it as a region for us coming together, delivering, if you will, a $13 million project. But I will say it is one project that's talked about across the state, and it's easier said than done. And it really shows you have to have skin in the game for anything to be discussed. There's just really no projects that are coming to the state board to say, hey, we have a project, pay for it. And it took this many years to get where we're at. So we're at the design phase. I believe when construction happens, I've heard an 18-month construction window. So we would be looking at, and I'm losing track, John, I think that would be, is it 23, I think, if I remember right. We would be looking for the road to be done, so.
Correct.
Yeah. All right,
Okay.
so that's the highlights of the project.
So basically, a lot of the changes had to do with the median work and things like that, as far as design goes.
I would say as a whole, yes, Frank, that contributed to it. Specifically, where we're at and what's been presented to me is right-of-way issues, what we've just run into recently, and some utility-related matters. Is where we're at, but I would argue what you're saying, that's the median absolutely added to the overall project for sure.
And I know there was a lot of concern about the big culvert that's so deep underneath there. Did that have any impact as well? Maybe some extra work on that, or?
Yeah, I would say that. Additionally, there's some lighting. I believe lighting in that lower area, because that culvert is part of the circle trail. So they've enhanced that slightly, and they are enhancing that for both wildlife and people, bike pedestrian area. There's some additional lighting on State Route 69 that has been a part of it. Multi-use path is part of it. So I think as this project has evolved, there's definitely been more evolution, I guess, is how I would say.
Okay. And just for my curiosity, who's the designer? Was that an ADOT selection type thing where they normally do?
John, you may know that, but AECOM, I believe, is the project managing team. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Alrighty, that's all I've got. I think Norm might have another question.
You bet. Go for it.
Yeah, but could someone explain to you, what's the geometry of the median they have out there? What is it? Is it a raised median or a 6-inch curb, or what is it? For the project we're talking about.
John?
Yeah, it's going to be a raised median with a 6-inch curb.
Is there gonna be landscape in it?
That's being looked at right now. We're looking at cost versus drainage. That raised median is going to need to have drainage in it. So I don't think they've concluded on what landscaping, if any, would be in there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? All right, Mr. Chair, at this point, we'd be looking for a motion. And again, you do have an amendment with a list of things. So again, Allison and I did the best we could to come up with the funds to make it work. The group will have another opportunity at the August retreat, to review our commitment to projects, and happy to take comments between now and then. But at this point, in order to pay the bill, we need an action to move forward, please.
Okay. With that, I'll open it up if anyone wants to step up and make a motion.
I make a motion to move forward with the amendments.
Okay. So I'll take that as that we make a motion to contribute the additional $117,000 for the 69 safety and capacity improvements in FY22.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Dan seconds. So with that, any other discussion or questions? Okay, so I'll call for a vote. If the TAC members could unmute. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so I think with that, the motion carries to approve that amendment as it was written out. So with that, I think where are we at? Item 10?
Yes.
Review and discussion and possible action to select a consultant for the SR 89A on-ramps alternative selection report. Is that you, Daniel?
Yes. Thank you. So we've received 4 submittals from AECOM, Ferguson Nyepel, Kittleson Associates, and Wilson and Company. And today with the motion, we're looking for the tax consultant and the second pick in case we run into any issues with the first one.
I make a motion to approve AECOM and Wilson as the second.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble on the phone. Was the second Wilson or Kittleson or?
Based on your discussion during the working group, Kittleson was the second.
Correct, Daniel.
Okay, must be my ears. Can you say that word one more time, Daniel, for me?
Kittleson was the second pick.
Kittleson, okay. I need to quit being around equipment so much.
I concur with that. Yes, Kittleson.
Okay.
I'll second the motion, Frank, as AECOM as the primary consultant for the 89A on-ramps alternative selection report, and Kittleson and Associates as the runner-up.
Okay, and I guess my only discussion is a little less in favor of AECOM after hearing about the cost overruns, but it sounds like it wasn't their fault on the 69 project. Just sounds like project scope creep. So we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, looks like that carries. And let me get back to my agenda. Item 11, review and discussion of park and ride system. Mr. Gallegos, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TAC. We've received a request from Councilman Phil Good, who sits on the SIMPO Executive Board, to begin some discussions with you as a TAC and the Executive Board regarding an idea of a park and ride proposal or project. And it is in your packet. If Allison or Daniel could bring that up on the screen. And in just a moment, I'll turn this over to Ian. Just to give everyone a heads up, though, this is a very initial conversation. We're not looking to spend much time on it today, but this is out in the airport area. Tentative proposal would be for that intersection at State Route 89 and James Lane. This is part of the master development plan to have some land reserved for other uses, and City of Prescott and this the development area is looking at possible park and ride area. Those that may have some familiarity, again, it's basically a parking lot area that could provide for a location for transit to have a meeting spot for cars to be able to park, for van pools and carpools. So with that said, would like to ask Ian to chime in. Councilman Good was not able to join us today, so Ian will step in for him and offer any input on his behalf for the City of Prescott. Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Vinny. Yeah, so Councilman Good did obviously add this item. He intended to be here, but unfortunately he had a conflicting meeting he had to go to this morning. So I've talked to him briefly, in person and then through email. But the general concepts, like Vinny said, this area is under development out there. I think from the Deep Well plan, they had this transit kind of bike ped portion of the master plan, and it identified that might be a good location for that. What that looks like, what that means for existing transit systems and future transit systems. Obviously the city of Prescott doesn't have a transit system. Decisions regarding where we're going with that in the future haven't specifically been made at this point. So this is very conceptual. The exact purpose of what we would use that for and where these people are going to be parking and going is obviously still a question as well. But he did want to at least throw this idea out there as we are discussing other developments in the area. It is an opportune time to at least look at maybe reserving some of the land in the area. It obviously has limitations on what can be used, especially in the area. If you can see the attachment where the red star is, that can't be residential because of the airport zones and et cetera. So there's just these initial discussions going on. I know that in this little bullet points that Councilman Good kind of talked about SIMPO participates in the review and seeking of funding. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if any of us exactly know what that looks like or where that's going to go. Lacking Councilman Good being here today, I kind of feel like it's just an intro. You guys have the info. You know that we're kind of talking with developer in the area about maybe citing a location, and then we may have future offline discussions regarding what this looks like and what kind of participation this ultimately would have, and then if it has an impact on SIMPO or if there is even an avenue for funding or anything like that going forward. He mentioned federal infrastructure funding that has come available, and whether, I think his thoughts are, hey, if we can have a shovel-ready project, then this could be it. That would be a good thing. But again, I'm not clear about how all that works, and I don't know that anyone is at this point. So, that's really all I had, Vinny. We probably, like you and I talked, will discuss this more. I don't know if Good will want to at least mention this during the August retreat. He may, but we'll let him go ahead and move this thing forward as we move along. So
yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Ian, so much for that update. I will let the TAC know too. In talking with Councilman Good, and Ian mentioned it, the city of Prescott doesn't currently have a transit system, and SIMPO does have a transit plan, which the town of Prescott Valley is working out of and through, and the city of Prescott's identified in that transit plan. In light of this very early tentative idea, my initial thought is it as an initial idea has some real potential, but what I expressed to Councilman Good is it has greater potential if the city of Prescott, if he and the other council members and staff would have a greater intent to move forward with transit. So we'll stay tuned. We'll see what they come back with. From a SIMPO standpoint, our consideration, not today, but in the future, maybe at the retreat and beyond, is, would SIMPO have an opportunity to evaluate, plan the region, looking at opportunities as it relates to park and ride, not only for this location, but maybe there's other locations, in light of, again, Prescott Valley taking the lead with transit. Are there other locations that could be considered for this, where they might be able to meet up with the Yavapai Regional Transit and a possible future Prescott Transit? And then to expand the planning a little bit further, maybe there's a greater way to look at all of transportation in the sense of multimodal, bike, pedestrian, and more transit. So an active transportation plan, we might be able to kick around that idea and tie this all in together. But really today is just to introduce the idea. I would expect Councilman Good to continue to champion this a bit further, and just wanted to put this out there initially today. We'll present more information as it comes available, but wanted to keep you all in the loop. Pretty early on, happy to take any questions or comments. So at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. I'll have one too at some point.
I think this is a good idea. I think it's, forward thinking. The proximity to the airport certainly helps. I presume that if this got off the ground, there would be, some possibility of a shuttle between the terminal and this park and ride as well. I'm just throwing this out there. I wonder if there's possibility of, if this becomes part of the airport planning documents for the city, that maybe there could be some funding opportunities there as well, if it becomes kind of an annex parking area for the city for long-term, parking at the airport, assuming they run out of space at some point for parking at the terminal, kind of an off-site shuttle sort of system that then of course gives access to the greater Prescott Valley, Chino Valley area via some transit program. I think that the idea that it is of where this is, it's right there underneath planes as they're coming in and taking off, is completely agreed that that is not appropriate for residential. So let's make it into a parking lot and get it on the map with regards to association with the airport. So just my thoughts. There may be some FAA money available at some point if they can get this a part of their long-term planning with regards to the airport too.
Thank you, Dan, for your comments. We'll definitely add them to our file on it, and it's a little bit more expanded than what we've talked about so far, but I like it. I did ask some questions of Councilman Good as it relates to the airport and this, but I do like some of your ideas, and we'll add those notes to it. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Vinny, that also ties into what I was thinking too, just preliminarily, is that, yeah, at least when they're thinking about the exact location and dealing with the airport, you look at least maybe plan for future access, look towards pedestrian crossing of 89. I'm not, that roundabout with traffic not stopping might wind up getting tricky if people are walking over to the airport. So maybe some future walkways or pedestrian overpass, that's probably way in the future when you think about just getting a lot there first and then looking at what happens as growth occurs. But maybe at least plan for that and maybe get some locations scoped out or utilize the signal up by the Circle K might be another advantage for helping pedestrian or bike access across that highway. I'd also, with considering bicycle and access, the Peavine Trail is on the other side of the airport, so maybe some access through the trail system at some point, connecting that to where folks would have another option to park there. It's a little far away, and there might be other options, but I think keeping all that in the overall scope would be a good thing when you look at the high 30,000 foot level planning for that.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you, Frank. We'll make those notes also. Good ideas.
Anybody else have any comments or questions for John? Or okay, I appreciate that, John, filling in for Phil, and I'm sure you can bring it back, Vinny, as needed for more updates and presentations. And I think we're on to item 12, update of crash data analysis and highway safety improvement program application projects. I know Mike's here, but Vinny, you want to take the lead on this? And
Yeah,
we're gonna-
I do. Thanks, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, members of the TAC. Yeah, we do have our project manager, Mike Blankenship, with us. And I'll turn it over to him in just a moment. Just to let you know, again, this is not an action item, it's a discussion item, which we had in our tentative schedule, but we're looking to continue the conversation. What you have in your packets today is based upon the discussion from last time. Mike is really facilitating the conversation with you all to really try and show you both the crash data, possible projects, have discussions with you, and he's doing the best he can with me to narrow down the projects that he thinks he hears are rising to the top. With that said, it's still completely open based on all the 5-year crash data that he's presented to you. What you do have in your packets is, again, what he's attempted to narrow down and streamline the conversation. But if you don't see something listed on there, happy to open that up. A reminder to the group, again, we are SIMPO is looking to pay for and sponsor 3 HSIP applications. That doesn't in any way stop any of you as local agencies from also applying for projects that are listed here. The discussion should be which 3 projects are SIMPO completing the applications for. And again, if you see a project in your area, you can complete the application through your own staff, or another option is through our existing contract. Mike has offered to be able to work with you, and you would basically pay through the SIMPO contract for an application for your particular area. So Mike, if you want to walk us through what you've come up with on the list, I think that's probably a good lead in for you at this point.
Sure. Thanks, Vanny. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the list that you have, and it might be helpful, Daniel, if you or Allison could pull it up there, but there's 11 potential projects on there. 10 of them are infrastructure related, and then one of them is a study to consider updating your safety plan. And we've kind of listed them there from highest potential benefit cost ratio to lowest. And as you recall, that's what ADI is going to rank these applications on, is which ones have the highest BC ratio, benefit cost ratio. And they will go down the list, and basically if it meets the qualifications and has a high BC ratio, it'll get funded until they run out of their $35 million or so for fiscal 25 and $35 million for fiscal 26. So the first one, and I guess before we comment on it too much, this one stands out just because of all the fatals, and it's a county, Yavapai County, 7 fatal crashes. I think the first thing I wanted to bring up was that most of those crashes fall outside of the SIMPO region. So if that in any way limits whether or not Vinny and Dan and using one of your 3 to go after this, that might preclude us from getting too deep in the discussion here. But in terms of fatals and a project that would really stand out and be very competitive, this one really jumps out, unfortunately, because of all the fatals that are out there. And what we showed was just a simple adding centerline and shoulder rumble strips over the entire length, basically, of Iron Springs Road. And gives you, as you can see there, about a 46 benefit cost ratio, which again is extremely high. The last round, the lowest ranked project that still received funding had a BC ratio of 6.8. And I expect it's going to be fairly similar this coming round. Anything with say a 7 and up probably stands a decent shot at getting funded.
All right, so let me just say that I don't expect SIMPO to cover this one, but I do think the county has every intention of submitting an application for this, but since it's outside the SIMPO boundaries, we will work on that outside of this particular contract, Mike, for it. I think that we talked about internally here this morning at the county. We are preparing to do a request for proposals, I believe, for kind of a corridor study on Iron Springs Road. I have a feeling that we will include application of HSIP submittal as part of that to be completed before the end of the application deadline. So we will be chasing this at the county, but this is not one that I think SIMPO should be covering. I will also say that we don't think we just want to do rumble strips. We are very interested in throwing some extra money at this and talking about passing or climbing lanes, and probably making it a larger, I'm thinking in the millions of dollars range, kind of project, rather than just this 900,000 we're looking at here. So please carry on and know that this will be coming out, and Mike, there's a good chance we might be working with you on this anyway. So.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. And we did throw some other options in there, including the climbing and passing lanes. And I totally agree with you. I think this is one where you go after as much as you can from HSIP, which the max would be 5 million. But yeah, you may have a project even higher than that, to where you'd want to try to get some federal safety funds to put towards it.
Yeah, I think that we're probably, I'm happy to bring that BC ratio down to the 10 range and stretch things out a little and ask for more. That's kind of my intent at this point.
Sure. Yep. Okay. Very good. Second one on the list there would be up in Chino Valley on State Route 89. And just a heads up, there's already 3 projects in the Chino Valley region that will be getting HSIP funds for fiscal years 23 and 24. It's adding passing lanes from milepost 331 to about 337, and that's a $2.2 million project. A left turn lane there at Little Ranch Road intersection, where there's been a couple of fatals, and then centerline rumble strips over about 25 miles or so from milepost 339 to 363. So those 3 projects alone are about $4.5 million. And we'll be making, like I said, 3 separate projects for improvements up there, which I think is going to help address the fatals that are up there. What we're showing here is to have an additional centerline rumble strip considered by ADOT between milepost 331 and 339. Again, it's fairly low cost, $350,000. It'll help address 4 fatal crashes and gives you, again, a very high BC ratio of 35. I guess the one question I would throw out maybe to John or Myrna, if they know, it's the project there, the passing lane project between milepost 331 and 336, which would overlap what we're recommending here. It may already include adding rumble strips. I couldn't get any additional information on that project other than it's a passing lane project. So if it does, part, if not all of this potential project would go away. This project extends about 2 or 3 miles beyond the limits of that climbing lane, passing lane project.
Also, Mike, while you're on this project, I'm going to ask Daniel. He created a map, because this is a little bit confusing, not only to me, but I would assume to all of us, in the sense that there's a number of projects that HSIP funds are in this area that Mike just ran through. So this would be an additional project. I would also put out there that Representative Wynn also is attempting to champion this area. He's been working with the Paulden and group out there, and definitely see some need for safety improvements. So Daniel, can you bring up that map? And this should help us visually see what Mike just talked about here.
Is that for the projects for 23, 24?
Yes.
The map that you made with the HSIP projects.
Okay, 1 second.
And Mike, I'm sorry, there's 3 projects out there you said, or 4
Yes.
right now?
There's 3 on that stretch of 89
Yeah.
through the Chino Valley, Paulden area.
So everyone, Daniel created this map just to highlight what is being done. So I don't know, Mike, if you want to just quickly, I'm sorry, hit on those projects again.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, no problem. So on the left there, that would be the limits of that passing lane project from milepost 331 to 336.7. It's a $2.2 million project. And just for reference, it had a 7.3 BC ratio. So it was on the low end of the ones that got funded in this last round, but it did get funded. On the right there would be installing a left turn lane for northbound State Route 89 at Little Ranch Road. And there's been 2 fatals there, high-speed rear end crashes. I think they were both high-speed rear end. One of them might have been a left turn. But so this left turn lane sorely needed, and I think will help address at least that particular issue there. And then the next one there is a longer 24-mile stretch of adding centerline rumble strips from milepost 339 up to 363.
And then finally, again, to circle back on what's being tentatively proposed by Mike here is, so again, this would add another project. And Mike, this is from milepost 331 to 339 for centerline rumble strips.
Yeah, so if we could go back to that map, Daniel, that for that first one there, it just shows, yeah, there would be some overlap in terms of the milepost. So this passing lane is 331 to 336. The centerline rumble strip potential project that we've got on the list here recommending would go from the same southern limit, milepost 331, but it would extend for 8 miles rather than the 5, almost 6 miles here, with centerline rumble strips. And I guess the question I was throwing out was, or maybe the comment, centerline rumble strips may already be included with this project that's coming in, at least for this 5.6 mile stretch. So if that's the case, this one this recommended project might either go away or just it would be a shorter project.
And I'm sorry for clarification, this is in the town of Chino Valley jurisdiction or Yavapai County?
Yes. I can jump in there, Vinny. I think we might checkerboard a little bit in and out of there with Chino Valley. Our town limits actually extend pretty far, roughly up to where Old 89, the south end of that. I think there's been a couple fatalities at that intersection. And we might even cross back again. We kind of follow Old 89, take in Sullivan Lake, which Sullivan Lake's almost across the street from Little Ranch Road. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge up there in the Del Rio area where the town limits commingle and like I said, even almost checkerboard a little bit with county jurisdiction. And I don't know if Dan's got any better information than that.
No, that sounds about right, Frank. Obviously, these are on NADOT highways at this point, so they would be the primary owner of these, right?
Yeah. And I will say too, just being up in that area, I think even at least one of the fatalities at Little Ranch, maybe 2, even occurred after that project was already selected. So, and I actually used to live on that road. It's what you get people northbound waiting to turn left, and people will come up behind them and just run them over. And it's a long needed project, and glad to see it on the list. Anything they do out there, someday we're going to have to bite the bullet and just get it 4-lane divided, but I know how expensive that is.
So again, I think there's a consensus. This area is in need. There's already some commitment of HSIP dollars. ADOT's pursued that. So the question at hand is, do we want to make this one of our 3 SIMPO applications? Do we want to look to either Yavapai County, Chino Valley, and or ADOT, maybe to make it a local project in the sense of pursuing HSIP funds. So I think that's the question for the group at hand.
Well, as Mike has touched on, it may be included in other projects or no? Or we need to find that out.
Hi, this is Myrna. I was just looking at the tentative 5-year program. And so I'm looking at SR 89 from milepost 339 to 363 is what is currently in the program for construction in FY23.
That's north of this though, right?
Correct. And so, yes, that's correct. So there, I don't see an overlap, but it would be a continuation of that project. I don't see any other projects, rumble strip projects along that stretch.
Okay.
Myrna, I think they're asking about the passing lane project, 331 to 337.
Yeah, and that's the Del Rio area, isn't it, John?
Yeah, yeah, and that I think what Mike was talking about was I think he was talking about seeing if that passing lane project included the center line rumble strip as part of it, and that's
Yep.
something we can look into.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm not as familiar with the mile markers, but this being in Chino Valley, I don't want to not advocate for a project, but I also don't want to do rumble strips and then have them immediately torn out for a passing lane or something like that. And I'm just not sure. Looks like the question we're talking, Mike, is maybe from 337 to 339 is where the rumble strips might not overlap.
Yes, that's correct, Frank. If they are putting rumble strips in as part of that passing lane, then yes, it would just be that little over 2 mile stretch there. But in terms of the one comment you made, Frank, this rumble strip project, if it's pursued and awarded, would be in fiscal year 2 years after the passing lane project. But it would be nice if it could all be one project somehow, and maybe part of it is in that passing lane project.
Yeah, any idea of the dollar amount for the passing lane project?
Yeah, it's a 2.2 million.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering, Vinny, if we want to look at the other projects before we make a call on this particular one.
Yes, I think that would be a good idea. And it would allow us to do a little bit more conversations about the passing lane. I have an idea, but let me take that offline and follow up. But I agree with Frank. Let's put this one on hold just for a minute, or for at least this meeting.
Okay. The third one on the list, again, going in benefit cost ratio, highest to lowest. Glassford Hill Road, so in the Prescott Valley. And we were looking at the 4 signalized intersections there at Center Street, Sunset Lane, Veterans Way, Lakeshore Drive. They each had either a serious injury crash or a fatal crash. And again, those are the only 2 types of severity level crashes that can be used in going after HSIP funds. So Norm, what we had put together here was kind of 2 improvements at each of those intersections. They each have, based on the way the raised median is set up, and then the left turn lanes, when the left turn lanes face each other, if you've got a vehicle in the opposing or oncoming left turn lane, especially a larger vehicle, it can make it difficult to see around that vehicle when you're setting in the other left turn lane to see a safe gap to turn. So that's what's known as a negative left turn offset lane. And so part of this proposed project would be to improve those negative left turn lane offsets to get to at least a 0 offset, but ideally what would be called a positive left turn lane offset, where you and your left turning vehicle have been shifted far enough to the left where you can see around that oncoming or opposing left turn vehicle across the intersection and can judge your gaps better. So that would be part of it. And typically what's involved in that is pulling the median back, removing the median 20 to 30 feet, and then through pavement markings, shifting that 50 feet or so at the end of the left turn lane towards the left a couple of feet. So that would be part of it. Then the second part, and again, all this is up for discussion. The second part of that would be to install flashing yellow arrow signal heads on the approaches at these 4 intersections. Again, there's a safety benefit, a published safety benefit, especially for left turn crashes, which we're seeing at these intersections. So this would meet the bare minimum $250,000 requirement, or you can have a project smaller in size than that, and gives you almost a 23 benefit cost ratio, and addresses a couple of fatal crashes and 4 injury crashes over the 5-year period.
Tell me something, Mike. Can we just change them from protected permissive to just protected?
You could, and that would actually be, that would serve 2 purposes, Norm. That would be obviously very low cost, and obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but that is the safest improvement for left turn crashes, is to go protected only.
Yeah, I know we have that on Highway 69, and I think the public's used to it. I've seen those flashing yellows in Scottsdale and Tucson, I think, but I haven't seen any up in our neck of the woods up here. I might even recommend, just changing it to protected left turn, which would probably save a lot of those crashes, if that's a good recommendation.
It's a great recommendation, Norm. And I think the side streets up there, at least a couple of them, do have protected only. On Glassford, it's protected permissive. So I guess the only other comment I would add there is, if you go protected only, we may have to add a little bit more here to make sure you meet the minimum $250,000 HSIP requirement.
Yeah, to be honest with you, taking out the median seems like a lot of work. I hate to be third in line here, but I think that'd be the easiest option. It's nice to go grab some federal money, I guess, but it doesn't really seem to be the best recommendation. If we could just go protected, we could probably do a study outside this study to say, yes, it'd be a good recommendation to go protected.
And I'll just add my opinion, Norm, on that is, I'm a fan of the flashing yellows, but I'd also think that we should probably defer to the agency that would maintain those. If that's you guys, I kind of lean on what Prescott Valley would want there. Not so much, my personal preference, but you guys have to maintain it and operate it and everything. So to me, that would weigh heavily on what the scope should be there.
Thank you. That's all my comments.
So if I'm hearing it right, though, on that, Norm, you would not necessarily advocate for a SIMPO application, but it's something that you as the town, or the town, would be able to follow up on. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. To change the median and move the existing laneage out there. Boy, it's in favor of just putting a protected left turn lane. I mean, the threshold, we're seeing different thresholds now with the traffic on Glassford, that, the horizon date has come that we've got to make, we've closed some of our, open medians with, median diamonds. This may be just the next generation of what you got to do for that significant corridor with how much traffic it moves. Going to protected left, I think it'll work. We could study that.
Great. Thank you, Norm. So yeah, Mike, if we can take that off the list and look to the town to follow up on that. And if we can go to number 4, that'd be great.
Sure. And number 4, I think already has the same, we had this discussion last time. I wanted to keep all the projects in there that we had discussed last time, just to give you an idea of what, go ahead.
Sorry, I think, was that John had a comment before we moved on? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to offer a thought for the Glassford going protected only. One thing to keep in mind is the protected only takes away from your green time in the other direction. So it's just something to keep in mind as you look at that study.
And we might be able to incorporate it into our current adaptive signal study, be honest with you, if we've got crash reports. I know we've got a scope detailed, but.
I made a note of that, Norm. Thanks, John. Thanks, Norm. All right, sorry about that, Mike. Go for it.
Oh,
Number
no,
4.
that's quite all right. And it's a good point, John. Yeah, there is a trade-off there with some operational impacts from going protected only. The next one, I think, probably isn't going to rise to the level of an HSIP application, but we did want to keep it on because we discussed it last time. And Ian, I think what we had decided last time was if you did want to follow up on this, it would probably be a local project, but we wanted to just give you an idea of what the BC ratio might be and the typical cost for a hawk.
Yeah, on that, what was, you mentioned that during the last award period or whatever, what was the break point on the BC ratios for funded projects? Was it in the threes?
It was a 6.8, 6.9. It was just below a 7 for the last project that received funding. And I think the highest was, I want to say, up in the 40s or 50s, but most of them were in the 10 to 20 BC ratio range that were funded.
Okay. And then what was the timing on if you submit an application during this period, when did we think that would actually have funding available, in what fiscal year?
So this is for fiscal years 25 and 26. So it's out there a few years before you would get the money.
Okay. I was going to say on my on the Willow Creek Road, Hawk one, we do have in our streets IIP, I think I mentioned it last time, the city has prepared, we're collecting fees for like 10 improvement projects funded by a streets impact fee. And the one that is at 4 Points intersection, which would be just south of there by the hospital, it currently does show a planned construction of 2025. So we have like 1.3 million for 4 Point intersection improvements, which we feel could be intersection improvements, median improvements, or roundabout improvements for the vehicular movements, and now, because of the hospital changes, pedestrian movements. So while I said that last time, I don't know. I mean, we probably would want to look at this either as a local project, certainly, maybe as an application, because we could. I think I was clear last time. I think I understood that even if we go after this as a partial, like the Hawk, for instance, a Hawk could be built halfway between Ainsworth and 4 Points. Even if we were to do a roundabout at 4 Points with median improvements, a Hawk probably could be built into that project as a sub part of it, funded by an HSIP application. I think that's right, isn't it?
Yes, yes, that is correct, and that's a great idea. And yeah, this could be part of a larger project that would address the pedestrian safety issue on the north side of your larger 4 Points intersection project.
If I guess my only comment regarding whether this would be a SIMPO funded HSIP application or city is, and maybe it's for Vinny, we're going down this list and we're slowly moving towards like the ones that drop into the threes. And so far, I haven't heard anyone being an HSIP application. I guess as they all kind of, and another one is in the city of Prescott, which is Gail Gardner and Fair Signal, which that doesn't seem regional to me at all. If anything, this is more regional. So I guess that's my comment at this point. I don't have anything more to say than that, other than, we'll probably look at this one way or the other. But if they all fall out, I wouldn't mind it being considered, but that's all.
I appreciate you saying that, Ian. So what I'm hearing is maybe make this number 4 for now, and I appreciate your transparency with the group, saying, you see it more of a local project. However, if we get to a point where we're struggling coming up with a 3, that you're willing to advocate that this be part of the 3. I do remember you talking about Gail Gardner last time, and Mike has it on the list, and I asked him to put it on the list. Again, not necessarily to advocate it as a regional project, but once again, just to remind you as a local, it's a real great project. And if you wanted to, as the city, do an application, I think would be highly encouraged by SIMPO, and again, would be encouraged to work with Mike as an expansion of this contract we have for you to pay him to do the application. Either way, I think what I'm hearing, Mike, is this Willow Creek, we might circle back if we're struggling coming up with 3, but for now it's maybe number 4 on our list. And same thing maybe with Gail Gardner to some degree, if you will. But I think, Dan, was there another comment, or I heard of somebody's voice? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, thanks, Vinny. So Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, or Vinny, but you know, if you get this funding, I don't think you can make it a local project. You got to let ADOT manage this. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct. ADOT will manage it. It'll be, SIMPO's going to complete the application. We're going to turn it over to whoever's jurisdiction it is. So if this were to be a project, we would complete the application, turn it over to the city of Prescott. They would sign it and turn it in as it's within their jurisdiction. ADOT would manage the project, though. They would be the administrator and the project manager.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, I warn everyone to, if you're going to do this, and I'm thinking, you know, if you took the Hawk and you know, modified it into some larger project, you're going to regret that, because you're going to have ADOT managing the larger project, is my guess.
I asked that last time when we talked about this, and I thought if it was an element, let's say the Hawk was an element that's like a standalone designed element that sits there, because we already have our design for our roundabout stuff, and it just has that, okay, and then it shows plans by others, and it shows the Hawk. I thought we could separate those, because certainly this, I agree, Dan, I don't want to federalize like the 4 points improvements and all that, but I thought there would be a way to maybe separate those out.
Well,
anybody can correct
me. Ideas from others, but that's what I warn you of. Is it's nice picking a project that kind of acts as a standalone, because then you don't have to worry about these discussions. I mean, the last thing you want to do is federalize some larger project, as you said.
Yeah, point taken. Thanks.
All right. With that, we can get to the next one, which I will say I love this project. So.
Sorry, Dan, hold on just a minute. I see Norm's hand raised virtually. Sorry about that.
That's right.
Dan, I just wanted to take off. You made a good comment. You always give good guidance. These small projects, you know, we have on our MTIP the Lincoln sidewalk that, hell, that's been what, 12 years, Ian? So I like your guidance, Dan. I'd like to look at more regional projects for this small amount of funding. We just talked today that, you know, we can't deliver the Road 1 North signal. Look how much work that's been. You have as much labor in a $250,000 project as a $2.5 million. So I just caution, it's great to get the money, but we're not going to get the money for 3 years. And I just caution on these small projects, you turn upside down with the construction management. We've been, you know, shown that. So Vinny, I know you've had experience in Lake Havasu, but for these small dollar amounts, I don't know if you can actually get the project done. Anytime I've tried to do it as a local public agency, the contract administration eats up about $500,000. So if you don't start at $1 million, you know, you can't even get the project done, even though you got funded 5 years ago, type of thing. I don't know what the performance criteria has been.
Yeah, I would. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, hey, based on some of this conversation, I totally agree with Dan and Norm. Number 4 would be Gail Gardner and Fairland, and the Hawk maybe comes off. I wouldn't want to even mess with our 4 point stuff, which we want to control locally, and the timing of, especially when it's tied to street impact fees, which have a timeline to be spent, or we have to give them back.
Well,
you know,
what I would say, Ian, is you know, if you guys are interested in the Hawk, just make sure it's a separate standalone project. It would be what I would suggest. You know, I don't want to shoot down projects if they're good and they got a good BC ratio. That's great. I mean, it's an opportunity, and I love HSIP money. It comes in and it has great value. But you know, this 5th one down here, Williamson Valley Road at Stasinski, we talked internally this morning, and I love that project for this, because we can work all upstream and downstream of that thing all day long and do other improvements, and just leave that one until the money rolls in. And it's a very simple thing for us to do for the county. So if you guys are looking for projects, that 5th one down, I am totally on board with that one being one of the 3. So.
And Mike Blankenship, did you want to chime in on that? Anything about the Williamson Valley one that Dan's talking about?
No, it sounds like he loves the project and he's ready to move forward with it. So it jumps to the top of the list so far.
Yeah. It's kind of that sweet spot.
I guess one thing I would say, Dan, that one would have a match because it is a widening project. Most of these don't have local matches, but you're looking at a 5.7% match. So probably about, if it comes in at 750,000, about a $43,000 match.
That is not a problem at all.
Okay.
I will take nickel dollars all day long. And I can tell you, you know, that cost estimate might be a little low. We've done some other turn lane improvements on Williamson Valley Road in other locations. This is all part of a safety study that we did on that corridor that was done by, oh gosh, name's escaping me right now, but it has identified several locations up and down the Williamson Valley corridor, and that is, we've kind of just been picking away at things. In fact, we got one that we're just about to start up this month on another turn lane improvement. So, you know, to me, it's taking advantage of an opportunity. I hate to say, you know, leveraging fatal crashes. That's not my intent here. But if it opens up possibilities for us to get some funding help on these, you know, it's a very specific segment of Williams Valley Road. It's easier for us to enter into an agreement with ADOT to manage that. We would provide inspection on the side as well for our own edification. And so to me, that's, like I said, that's kind of a sweet spot.
Thank you, Dan. So Dan's making a great case for this maybe being one of our first regional projects. However, I see many virtual hands and I've lost track. So I'll go to Norm. I don't know if it was from the last point or this one, but Norm, to give you a chance if you have your hand raised there.
No, I don't think anyone cleared me out. I'm good. I had my question answered. Thank you.
Sure. Frank, you have your virtual hand up thing.
Sure, and I just want to maybe advocate for some of these that, with my experience with HSIP, it's actually, like Dan was talking about, the nickel dollars is a very good value for the agency. So even if, in my mind, if these are SIMPO and maybe not necessarily regional, the regional roads are all ADOT, and I'm not as opposed to maybe some of the HSIP funding going to what may be a local road, because, and I know I'm going down the list, but like Gale, Gardner, and Fair, that's a pretty big road that a lot of folks travel, just even if they're outside of Prescott. Williamson Valley, same way. So my only caution would be just make sure to scope the project right, because like Norm said, project management, I've been killed on a Hawk Signal. It was byways money, but it's similar to HSIP in the way the project's managed. We had some project delays, which increased traffic control, which increased project management costs, and it just kind of snowballed. So the big thing there for the local agencies is to really work with ADOT and try and make sure those projects are scoped very well up front. And I think that's a big thing when you look at those initial meetings. Make sure you get good people in there with good cost estimates and kind of look at all the pitfalls that could happen there. And if you do that good, it turns out to be really good projects and good values for the agencies.
Yeah, good comments, Frank. And I think Mike Blankenship, I think we have our fair share of war wounds over the last couple of years. And I think we've evolved, hopefully, enough. I don't want to guarantee, because who knows what will happen. But again, Mike and I and Havasu, to Norm's point, to Frank's point, we've definitely have been hit a lot. But with that, I would hope what's come out of it, Mike, for us is real, again, to Frank's point, improving scope, really trying to drill down what the cost is, and lessons learned over the years, even prior to that. Mike, if you want to chime in on that, where we are with scoping projects and so forth.
It's an excellent point that Frank brought up. And we have been working, not just we, but everybody that's been working on HSIP applications, working with Mark Hennig and ADOT's LPA section to make sure that these cost estimates are coming in as precise as you can make them, realizing that they're, the projects are 3 or 4 years out there. But the critical part of that is that it is the local agency that's on the hook for those cost overruns. And as Frank, I'm sure, can attest to going through it. So we definitely want to make sure that if we're erring on the cost estimate, we need to err on the high side so that there is a little bit of buffer in there. And ADOT has the application set up so we can add, 5% inflation costs and so forth. But you really don't want the local agency to be on the hook for, an extra $100,000, $200,000 worth at the end of the project that they may not even be able to come up with in most cases.
Thank you, Mike. So unless I'm hearing a strong objection, we're going to pencil this in as one of the 3 SIMPO projects. And again, we can circle back here at the end if there's objections. But Mike, do you want to talk about Big Chino Road?
Sure. And I'm assuming this is probably a Yavapai County facility, but it did have the one fatal. And if there is interest, you could get the bare minimum $250,000 project and get about 5 miles of rumble strips out there to help address the fatal and a couple of serious injury crashes.
Yeah, I think, the Williamson Valley Road 1 is a much higher priority for us. I worry that we don't have the structure on Big Chino Road for rumble strips. And I don't want to put the pavement at risk for a $250,000 project on this. My opinion is to let this one drift off the list.
Yeah, and that's, again, an excellent point, Dan, because a few of these HSIP projects have run into exactly what you just described. They put in, get funds for rumble strips, then they go out there and the pavement just can't handle it. It's a chip seal, or it's just deteriorated beyond useful life in terms of putting rumbles in.
Yeah, I'm totally fine dropping that off.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Dan. So we'll take that off the list for now. Lake Shore Drive, Mike.
Okay. Yep. Back to Norm's neck of the woods here. So there were a couple fatal crashes. I think one of the concerns Norm had at the last meeting was to take a closer look at those fatals, see if they may be involved impaired driving. We did look at them. They were not coded in ADOT's database as impaired driving. That does not mean that they weren't impaired drivers, but in terms of the data that ADOT uses for these applications, it did not show that they were impaired. Either way, ADOT does allow impaired driving crashes to be used in these. But I think more importantly, it's just whether or not this is the type of project, Norm, that you guys would be interested there. And we're looking at basically trying to get a little paving in there to widen the shoulders and then get some pavement markings, edge line and or center line markings out there on this stretch that doesn't have them between Papago Lane and Badger Road. So we're looking at a $500,000 project. It would address those 2 fatal crashes and give you a pretty decent BC ratio of 12, which if you are interested in going after this, my guess is it probably would be funded, but it's a matter of whether or not this is the type of project that you're interested in there in the town.
Well, I have the concern of being unsafe. I'm aware of, I think the one crash because we had to fix, it was a lane departure. If this wasn't a head-on or a rear end, that's what I wanted to know from the crash. But if it's someone that left the roadway, it's a 25-mile-per-hour road. If they're leaving the road because they're impaired or just whacked out or, impaired, I just have the concern in 3 years we have an unsafe road. I'd like to have the crashes looked at to see what the crashes were.
Yep. So, and it's a good point, Norm. So one of them was an out-of-control motorcyclist that left the road. That was one of the fatals. The other was a fatal rear-end crash. Okay, and then that's a good point. So this could be a good application. I think it's a good one. Again, it's if you do move forward with this and get the project, obviously if you get payment markings out there, that's one more thing that you're going to have to maintain every few years. So there is the maintenance aspect of it. But from a safety project, getting a little bit wider roadway out there, so you've got a little bit of paved shoulders, and then with some center line and edge line pavement markings, I think it makes for a good safety project. Yeah, it's a residential road. That's what concerns me but yeah. If it's a recommendation from a safety guy like you, then we need to put a center line on it. Yeah, I think the reason why I would lean that way, Norm, is because on either end of this road, you do have, pavement markings, raised median. But you're right. It is the residential stretch of Lakeshore Drive. So you can
Understood.
make
Thank
an
you.
argument either way. I think what it boils down to is if you are interested in a project, the fatals would support getting federal safety funds.
Can I ask a question about this intersection? You're talking about striping, and am I looking at the right one on Google Earth? Looks like there's some left turn lanes there already on Lakeshore for Badger. Is that the intersection?
Right.
Okay. So this would
It's
be
just
up there now?
Yeah, we just add a center line stripe down the road.
Down Badger or Lakeshore?
On Lakeshore.
Between Navajo and Badger.
Oh,
Yeah,
so that striping's just only right at Badger then, right? Okay. I think I see what you're talking about now. Okay. It's out of my neighborhood, so I was having to get familiar with it.
Yeah, and Norm, just to give you a little more on that fatal rear end, it's coded as occurring 40 feet outside of the intersection at North Moccasin Circle, which is just west of, trying to see the road names here, give you a better idea of where it is. Just west of Tonopah Drive.
On Lakeshore then.
On Lakeshore, going in, let me see if it says, heading eastbound. So it doesn't have what the estimated speed was, but I'm assuming it was a high speed rear end that happened there. So I don't know if it was a vehicle stopped waiting to turn at Tonopah and then another one just camped behind them, not paying attention and rear ended them. That's what it would appear based on the database information.
Yeah, as you can see, my angst is calling a section of road unsafe with one fatality. That's kind of an anomaly. There's plenty of recovery area outside. It's not like there's rock, cut slopes in there. So, yep. But if it's one that's per your evaluation, that's one we'll go with then.
I guess what I would say is I would have this project lower on the list, and let's see if another couple come through in terms of the 3 from SIMPO.
I have to say I like it because of the paved shoulders, putting the paved shoulders on. I think that's a good call.
Yeah, and I would say too, it's just, I don't know how time-wise we're working, but some of the 69 projects that are lower down look like they have options to them, so I don't want to skip over Gail Gardner if Ian wants to talk about that, but I'm interested in the 69 projects as well.
Yeah, Mike, let's circle back on this. This is a real possibility. It sounds like there's a little bit on the fence. There's some interest, but it's a real possibility. So let's come back to Lakeshore in just a minute if you want to run through the rest of the list.
Yeah. Frank mentioned the next one, Gail Gardner Way and Fair Street. If City of Prescott is interested in going after federal funds to get a signal, and I mentioned this last time, if it even meets the signal warrant analysis, we did not have the traffic volumes there to do a quick look at it. But in terms of having a fatal crash there, and ADOT has allowed these signal projects to be safety projects. So it would but what they also require is that it meets signal warrants, obviously. And that would be the potential holdup on this one. Other than that, I think this would be a good project if the city's interested in pursuing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ian. We're looking at the traffic volumes and, at least doing a internal preliminary look at the warrant. We think it will meet a warrant. And yeah, I mean, we would be interested. It is completely standalone, so it meets all the things you guys were talking about earlier. And it's right by our fairgrounds. It is a busier street, like Frank said. It is growing. So if it's, if it comes down to it, yeah, we'd consider it for one of the 3. That's why I'm saying it could be placed as 4 right now.
All right. Okay, then we'll move to
I'll say county
go
supports that one. mainly because of the proximity to our administrative building is right there. So we get a lot of county employee traffic through that intersection, I think. So we'd be supportive of that.
Okay. So the next two, or really the last two from an infrastructure standpoint, would be on State Route 69 there. If you could scroll down to the next page there. So the first one is over there in Prescott, in the general area of the Costco. And we're showing a widening because this is one of the projects on your regional transportation plan is eventual widening to 6 lanes. So the thought was maybe go after a portion of that widening, a small portion in this case, a mile of it. There's 3 fatal crashes there and a serious injury crash. So looking at a $5 million project, again, to get a mile of widening, gives you a very low BC ratio. It does meet the bare minimum of 2.5, but in my opinion, a 3.4 is probably not going to get funded unless there just aren't a lot of projects that are submitted to ADOT this round. Now, having said that, if you want to consider part of that widening project down the road and go after just getting your raised median in, you can get a very competitive BC ratio there. I guess the potential problem with that is how feasible is that from a constructability standpoint? If you don't get the 6 lanes widening for, let's say, another 10, 20 years, but you get your median in there, I would think you'd want to try to get the median installed so that you don't have to rip it up when you do come through with your widening. But again, that's, that's for you guys to discuss and debate here, I guess. But I guess the point being, if you want to go after a project, either of these 2 projects on State Route 69, it would probably be an install raised median that would get you the decent BC ratio and get you some funding. And that second State Route 69 project is over in Prescott Valley, kind of on the eastern side. Again, widening, you can get a little less than a mile, and you're going to get a very low BC ratio, or you can go with installing raised median and get you a mile at 22.5, or extend that and get a couple miles and still probably have a pretty decent BC ratio of 10 or 12 for median installation. I guess open that one up to discussion, it merits, pros and cons of widening or installing median.
Yeah, and since I mentioned this already, I'll jump in. Yeah, if we do these, or from a simple point of view, I don't know the feasibility or how ADOT or Prescott and Prescott Valley feel about these, but I would almost be more in favor of going towards the higher BC ratio, just from competitiveness of the projects. But the more I think about it, the more I'd almost rather see from SIMPO, being these are ADOT roads, ADOT could apply for these themselves. Maybe the SIMPO applications could help out if they want to go with Lakeshore or Gardner with those, and let ADOT take on these themselves if they want. It's just some ideas I'm throwing out there.
I could offer that project you show there, Navajo to Mendocino, where you mentioned or install raised median. We just did put that raised median in down at that location.
John, are you saying that
I got a question.
or you put in for funding for it?
No, it's been constructed.
Okay. I never get through there anymore, so I don't know.
Yeah, that was
I have a
project. We actually have that raised median going all the way down to almost to Enterprise.
All right.
And John Hughes has a question or a comment.
Hey, Benny, we've had on the books for a while Clearview off of 169. Has there been anything about that come up? That was brought to SIMPO 3 or 4 years ago. Are we familiar with that at all?
I'm not
starting lane?
offhand. I'm not offhand.
Okay.
If anyone wants to help me with that, I'm happy to talk about it. I haven't heard anything recently about it though.
Okay, I just didn't know if Ed Hanks had mentioned that lately or not when he was still there.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, at least not since I've been back. I haven't heard anything, John, but I'm happy to follow up on it with you.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I didn't know if it was in that study or not because there's been a few wrecks there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I guess maybe if I can add a comment or two here. So I definitely like the high dollar amount, kind of back to some of the earlier comments. I think Norm in particular, I would be in agreement. You know, there's something about, you know, getting the best bang for our buck, but easier said than done, lots of strings attached. So to me, what's very attractive about these is the high dollar amount, but what's already been said, again, it's on the state route system. We could look to ADOT and work with ADOT to help them pursue HSIP applications and look more to some of the local projects. So either philosophy is totally fine with staff, and we can look at some of these local projects. I think the last thing I want to hit on before I kind of wrap up for your consideration is I did have Mike list at the bottom there, the SIMPO Strategic Transportation Safety Plan. This is another eligible project that we would be able to go ahead and evaluate the entire region for a safety plan update. We do have a previous safety plan update, and again, we worked with NACOG and Flagstaff as a larger region, but we could either put in an application for our region only, or we can partner with NACOG and Metro Plan again. Either way, I would strongly advocate for this being one of our 3 applications in the sense that it brings 300,000 more planning dollars and would again provide you all and us with more specific information for our future. So I would strongly advocate for this being one of the 3. With that said, though, we can, there's a number of things we can do, but any other questions or comments? Norm, I hear you tapping, I think.
No, I'm good, Benny. Thank you. So to rehash, what's the 3 projects we're going with?
As of right now, we only have Williamson Valley. That seemed like a pretty strong consensus. Lakeshore was a strong possibility, but the group wanted to go through the rest of the list. Gail Gardner is a real possibility. So unless I am hearing otherwise, I'm going to throw out what I think is where we're at, and you guys please correct me if I'm wrong. Williamson Valley Road number 1, Lakeshore number 2, Gail Gardner number 3, and everything else. I'm sorry, I left off our transportation plan in that. So I guess number 3 would either be Gail Gardner or our transportation plan. But I guess I would rather try and expand it to 4 projects and see if I can find $5,000 and or work with the locals, one or the other. So did I summarize that right, or am I missing the consensus from the group?
Sounds about right to me, Vinny.
That works for me.
So let's go with, if we
Vinny,
can, let's go with 4 projects, Mike, and let me try and find some additional funds to put in a 4th application. But I hear Williamson Valley, Lakeshore, Gail Gardner, and the SIMPO Transportation Safety Plan is what I'm hearing.
Okay, I guess I would just throw in there and make sure that that Gail Gardner was going to be above the Hawk, because it sounded like if he could get the Hawk in there as a standalone, they were still interested in that.
Yeah, it's Ian. I prefer Gail Gardner and Fair.
Okay.
Yeah, less complicated, standalone.
Sure.
And real quick, Ian, do you think we need to check the signal warrants on that before the application, or is that part of the process?
No, we're doing that. We'll know that within a week or so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a quick process for us. I can follow up with Vinny and just confirm that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ian. And Norm has his hand up. Norm?
Vinny, can you rehash for us when the applications are due, and if we whittle it down to 3 or 4 projects, when the applications are due?
You betcha. So the call for projects, and Mike, jump in here with me. Call for projects is July the 1st, and then the deadline is November, what is it?
It's November 1st or 2nd. It's that first week in November.
So Norm, what would happen now is Mike, or we'll get the official information in July from ADOT, all the specifics, but what Mike's going to do is he's going to work on, he's going to go ahead and start drafting these HSIP applications, 4 of them at this point, for your review and consideration, and he'll come back to your August, September meeting and show you the details and make sure that this is what you all are supportive of. So that's the schedule that we're working with them.
Good, thank you, Vinny.
You're welcome. So I think we have marching orders unless there's any other questions or comments.
Okay, do you need a motion on that, Vinny, or is that good enough direction?
No, we're good enough for now. Thank you.
Okay. I think that moves us to, and I apologize again, seems like we're running long again, so if we can rush through this, maybe let folks get on with their day. Agency announcements and updates. I'll try and go through just use the roll call list. I'll start, not much has changed right now. We're still looking at some more funding than we've had in the past, which is a good thing. Road 2 North. We're somewhat tied to Road 1 North because it's the same contractor, Asphalt Paving and Supply. But they should be starting that up by Safeway after July 4th. So if you're coming through Chino, it might be adventurous between those 2 roads right next to each other. And we've got some various other projects, and I will say VSS came in with our slurry seal project. It's about $1 million, a lot of local streets, and it went over really well. They had really good notification with the public. Very few complaints considering the amount of homes that we affected. So that was a good project. So with that, Norm, you got anything for Prescott Valley?
Yes, a quick update. We're real proud of our development impact fee project. We just got the signal at Spofford's House widened to the new park, and that's development impact fee driven by growth. In addition to Viewpoint Drive widening north of 89A, the development community and development impact fees is paying for that widening for better mobility out in that area. So very good use of development and growth pace of growth in Prescott Valley. And we do have our Antelope Meadows free flow right. Likewise, that's a development impact fee job, but noteworthy there, we're partnering with Yavapai County to put that project into place. With some of the growth we're seeing north of 89A, we've got a lot of mobility and extra lane widenings with development impact fee and partnerships with the county. Those have done very well. That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hughes, anything for Dewey?
Yes, we're just finishing up on our 5-year cycle of the chip seal projects, and the budget this year for the town is acquiring a new blade and a water truck. So try to help maintain our roads around our own town and that. And then we also put some money aside for a study on traffic on 69 on Main Street. We've had a couple of fatalities there in the last 6 months, so want to see if we can figure out something there and resolve that issue. But other than that, things are moving forward down there, and we had a positive budget here, so it's a good thing, and we're going to be good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mattingly, Prescott.
About the only thing regional is the paving work going on Iron Springs Road and Williamson Valley. I think from our city limits there by, as you come in on Williamson Valley Road, they were adjusting manholes already. They're going to be grinding and then repaving, so that'll obviously cause some traffic issues as we do that. Luckily, school's out. Beyond that, just paving small roadways around town and continuing to do our striping work through the end of June in this cycle. That's it. Thanks.
All right, Mr. Cherry at the county.
Yeah, I've touched on these a little bit already, but we've got Williamson Valley Road, phase 3 of our safety improvements out there. We're lowering the road for improved sight distance and adding turn lanes at the Kelly O'Neill Stringfield intersection. We're expecting to start construction on that later this month. I've got my engineers working on a chip seal project design that we're going out for Iron Springs Road. That's the full length, all 34 miles of it. We'll be doing that probably August, September timeframe, if I had to guess. So we're kind of curious to see what kind of price we get for such a large project. And then lastly, we've got Kittleson working on a design for roundabout at Commerce Drive and Pioneer Parkway. Getting that thing done. We're hoping for some 30% plans by the end of July. We believe we can partner with the city of Prescott a little bit and possibly even the developer that's constructing the northern leg of that intersection now to lead back to a new development. So I'm hoping to fast track that full design, have it done by the end of this calendar year, and construction of that sometime in starting in the first few months of 22 if all goes well. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Anything else with ADOT MPD, Myrna?
I do not have any additional.
Okay, yep, no, you gave the update. And anything, John, anything with ADOT that you may have missed earlier?
No, I'm a little curious about what John said about fatalities at 69 in Maine.
He mentioned Clearwater, didn't he?
No, it was actually just off of Maine going northbound from the light. We're just wanting to do a study from the light down that corridor. There has been 2 wrecks. One at 3 o'clock in the morning, a FedEx truck destroyed a car, and then the other one, driver turned in front of the other one, and that I might have been overspoken on the one of fatality, but the one is a 6-year-old kid paralyzed from the neck down, still in the hospital, but it's just a big concern. There's been 2 wrecks at that same spot, and that's at Closs Avenue, right off of 69, which is about 500 feet from Maine, right there. So I didn't mean to confuse you there.
Okay, so those were on 69 at Closs, or
Yes.
were they on Closs?
No, on 69.
Okay.
Yeah, the one happened Easter Sunday, and it shut the highway down for 3 or 4 hours.
Okay.
And then the other one was a couple of months before that.
If Mike is on the phone, do we need to look at that in the HSIP?
That's what I was gonna say. It's so recent, but Mike, any ideas if you could give that a quick look?
Sure. Yeah, we'll take a look.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for pointing those out.
Yes, no problem.
All right, and so I think that's it. Am I missing anyone, Vinny, on the agencies?
Not that I'm aware of, Frank.
Okay. Any future agenda items anyone wants to request or bring up? Okay. With that, and maybe I'll change it this time. How about a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed, then I will find you. No. Okay, looks like motion passes. Thanks for putting up with another long one. Y'all remember that next time you vote for me to run this meeting.
Well, Frank, we'll give you July off because you all spent so much time with us this month. So we'll take July off and we'll circle back in August. Frank and TAC, thank you all. Appreciate it.